This is the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Celebrity Afterlife Report, the first one of our second year on the internet. I'm your host, the Celebrity Medium. Things are getting very interesting in the next world, not that they're ever dull, and I have a selection of the most up-to-the-minute gossip about your favorite deceased celebrities to share with you today. As regular listeners to the report know, a few weeks back, Charles Lindbergh, the first man to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, joined the search for Adolf Hitler, who was reportedly living in a forest area in the afterlife, supposedly to atone for the evil he committed during his time as dictator of Germany. Now, if you haven't been listening to the show, or if you want to refresh yourself about the details of the story, I suggest you listen to the previous 3 episodes, which will get you up to speed. Anyway, on last week's report, I told you that the doorman of an exclusive Next World hotel told the press that he saw Lindbergh with a man who looked like Hitler. I now have word via one of my sources that the Next World newspaper, run by former CBS anchorman Walter Cronkite, has confirmed that Lindbergh is in contact with Hitler. And in previous reports, I've also told you that Lucky Lindy charmed singer Judy Garland into giving him the architectural plans for the all-female community Garland was planning on building before she abandoned the project to marry Fred Trump, Donald's deceased father. Rumors are running rampant that Lindbergh and Hitler have plans to build the town themselves and do something with it. Now, since both men have dropped out of public sight, however, that cannot be confirmed at this time. The other day, one of my sources offered to go to the site of the proposed town and poke around a bit. He got back to me and said that he saw some surveying being done, which suggests something is about to be constructed on the site. Now, whether that something is the town Garland had planned, and whether that construction is being guided by Lindbergh and Hitler, and for what purpose, are questions that remain to be answered. More than any story I've covered in some time, this one really has my curiosity up, and I promise you I will stay on top of it and tell you when I know, as soon as I know it. Comedian Mitch Hedberg transitioned to the afterlife in 2005 at age 37. On the earthly plane, his unusual speaking style and one-of-a-kind jokes made him a favorite with audiences and his fellow comedians alike. If you're unfamiliar with Mitch's work, I suggest you check YouTube for some video of his act. The other day, I got a call from a listener who didn't give her name, asking me what Hedberg is up to in the next world. I asked one of my afterlife sources about him and his doings. What I was told surprised me. There's a newspaper in the next world which has been described to me as roughly equivalent to USA Today in style. For some time now, the paper has been running a very unusual column under the byline of Charlie Eveready. The column features strange, surreal commentary by Mr. Eveready on everything from relationships to walking down the street to why dogs have the facial expressions they have. While the column has acquired a large readership, no one, at least no one outside the paper's editorial offices, knew who Charlie Eveready was or if that was even a real name. There have been many guesses as to who the writer might be, but the newspapers refused to confirm or deny any of them. Okay, by this point you have probably guessed that Charlie Eveready is really Mitch Hedberg, and you'd be right. Just the other day, Hedberg finally came forward and confessed that he is the mind behind the cryptic column. In an interview, Mitch said he wanted to see if his unique style of comedy would work in a format other than stand-up, and that he had approached the newspaper's management about writing a column. His only request was that they publish it under a pseudonym. Asked where he got the name Charlie Eveready, he laughed and said, "I don't know, I was thinking about batteries or something." Hedberg said he is not sure if he's going to continue writing the column now that people know he's the one behind it, as that might influence the way they respond to it. Joanne Carson was the second of Johnny Carson's 4 wives. She transitioned to the afterlife the other day, as she was never a celebrity in her own right during her time on the earthly plane. There was no large entourage waiting to greet her when she arrived. The ever-present greeter to the stars, soul brother number 1 James Brown, was of course there, but so were 2 other people whose presence came as a total surprise and shock to Joanne. One was Truman Capote, the author who was a close friend of Mrs. Carson. The other was Johnny Carson himself, who Capote had convinced to come along to meet her upon her arrival in her new existence. My source for this story, who happens to be James Brown himself, tells me that Carson, who had an off-camera reputation for being a bad drunk and domestic abuser, seemed uncomfortable with the reunion until Capote said, "Don't you have something to say to Joanne, John?" Carson reportedly stammered a bit before telling his ex-wife he was terribly sorry for the way he treated her during their marriage, and that he realizes he wasn't the husband he should have been. Joanne was moved by his apology and teared up, telling him that she forgave him and hoped that they could be friends now. The 2 hugged and promised to get together soon to talk about old times on the earthly plane. One last quick story before we wrap up this edition of the report. Regular listeners know about the iVironment, a blimp hangar-sized building Steve Jobs had built to house a climate simulator that allows next world citizens to experience a rainy day. Jobs hired legendary painter Jackson Pollock to create paintings to put in the iVironment's rainforest section. Just before recording this edition of the report, I received word that Jobs and Pollock recently nearly came to blows over the artwork the painter wanted to install in the massive building. I wasn't able to get all the details of the story before recording this report, but I expect to have them in time for next week's show. And with that cliffhanger, I prepare to lock up the Celebrity Afterlife studio until next week. Please come back then when I will have more up-to-the-minute gossip about all your favorite deceased celebrities. And please tell your friends that the report is available on iTunes. I am the Celebrity Medium. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast. To ask a question about your favorite deceased celebrity, call 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-369-3732.